sewing with felt requires a little bit of a thinner string that we call embroidery thread. And embroidery thread sometimes can be put on spools looking something like this. You purchase it in spools like this, and sometimes it gets wound onto these little cardboard spools. So you can see that embroidery thread is a lot thinner than yarn. So in order to use embroidery thread, you're going to need to check out a sewing kit. And in the sewing kit, you can see a list of materials on the front. And when we open that, there's a couple of things inside here that we're going to use. One is you'll see a little magnetic case that holds 3 needles. And then down in here, it might have something other than a flower on the end, but this is actually a needle threader. I'm going to show you how to use this. So it has a little loop of wire on the end of it. And then also grab the yarn that you are going to be using. So I would go ahead and pick the needle that has the largest hole. And go ahead and remove as much as you think you will need to finish your project, maybe plus a little extra. It's not a bad idea. And the first simplest way is to simply take the end of the thread and see if you can fit it through the eye of that needle. Sometimes if you pinch the very end of it, that's enough to kind of get it through there. Okay. Now, embroidery thread is actually made out of multiple strands. So the more times you do this, the more times this thread is used, it tends to get sort of frayed. And then it's almost impossible to get those multiple threads through there. So sometimes you can just snip a fresh end that's not all frayed. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to double your string over your needle. Just wrap it around, pinch it really, really, really tight, and remove it off of your needle, still pinching it. And that gives you sort of this nice sort of pinched sharp edge there that you should be able to push through your needle and then also pull out the other side. Okay. So if those two methods don't work, there are still a couple more options here. So one, taking your needle threader. So this is a little different. You actually have to insert the needle threader into the needle. Then you put your thread inside of the needle threader, and then you pull that whole contraption back through your needle, and the needle threader captures that thread and helps you pull that through. Then you can remove that needle threader, and we are finished with that. Okay? Now, the last method that I can show you, and for this you would need a little piece of paper, and that piece of paper needs to be able to fit through the eye of your needle when folded in half. So we kind of call this a boat, and let's see if folded in half, I'm going to take the edge of that I've creased and try to stick the edge of that through and pull that through. So if your paper fits through your needle, then go ahead and lay the end of your thread inside your boat. Take the corner of your needle, corner of your paper, slide it through your needle, remove your paper, and now your needle is threaded. Pretty cool. Whatever method you choose, once you have your needle threaded, again, you can either double strand your thread and tie a knot at the end, but this is going to be a really thick thread. So normally what Miss Ryba does is leave a little tail on your thread, but as you're sewing, you're going to want to hold on to the end of your needle. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to pull your thread out and you're going to have to keep on threading your needle again and again and again. So make sure you're holding tight onto the end of your needle there and that thread as you pull your needle through the fabric so it hangs on tight. Another good idea is to take the end of your thread and go ahead and tie a knot on that so that your tail doesn't keep coming through the end of what you're sewing. So tie one knot, crisscross, bring the tail around, And then try to get those knots in the same place, and that ends up building a bigger and a bigger knot. Usually 2 or 3 times is sufficient for what you're sewing. Okay. So again, this is a larger eye metal needle with embroidery thread, which is good to use for our felt projects.